I have a crazy, crazy story about the Statue of Liberty.
Tell me.
And this might be an episode in the future. So, so I was watching this show. I don't remember what show I was watching, and there was a photo of my grandfather on there, and I was like, "What?" And it was just random because it's like natives, like black and white photos, because sometimes they just do that.
I know that guy.
Yeah, and I was like, "Hey, that's my guy," and I never had seen that photo, and so I've been working on this project, doing research at the National Archives, and actually came across that same photo, and it was in New York City, and it was across the bay from the Statue of Liberty. And this guy, this millionaire, capitalist guy, his name is Wanamaker. I can't remember the exact. It was part of this whole process where in the 1910s, the kind of like financial elite as well as the Bureau of Indian Affairs went through this whole like Americanization process where it was like, we need to Americanize immigrants and we need to Americanize Native people and Black people, but also we need to show like white supremacy because it's also at the height of the Klan as well. And it's the decade where most of the Confederate monuments were built in the United States. And so these like high-minded liberal progressives were like, let's do citizenship ceremonies throughout the country.
Yeah, oh my
quote
God.
unquote
That
citizenship.
video you sent me, oh my God.
That's what this was
it
part of.
haunts me.
So my grandfather, he was a
Wow.
translator. And so they invited him with all these, and it was totally, because it was totally like, it was a total setup. And so these videos show, and maybe we'll post them, we'll do an episode on them, but these videos, they went to, I think it was 19 different Indian reservations, and it's literal flag worship. They make chiefs like kiss a flag, and they make them pray on it. And then there's this one clip in 1913 where they brought in the 7th Cavalry, who probably just got back from Cuba, from, like
doing empire work
in Cuba after, 20 years after the Wounded Knee Massacre. They bring them back to Pine Ridge, so the very people that they like massacred 20 years earlier, to do this like flag ceremony. And it's so like disgusting, and these are the kinds of like projects that we have in mind. Long story short, this whole citizenship project was part of this kind of like these financial elite Wall Street guys in New York City to build a monument, a shrine to Native people. Because it was the end, right? To their minds, it was the end, like the final frontier, Star Trek, final frontier of indigenous people. Like they were not going to carry on into the 20th and let alone the 21st century. So they were going to make a monument basically to show on one side of the river, the advent of civilization, or the one side of the bay, the advent of civilization with the Statue of Liberty, and the declension narrative, or the kind of descendancy of the disappearance of indigenous people.
And that's close to Wall Street, I think, that area.
Yeah.
That's the Wall Street side, yeah.
But it never got built, but they just spent all this money to do all these awful things, these flag ceremonies. And there were, it went hand in hand with these competency ceremonies where Native people were deemed legally competent to manage their own affairs. It was a process, and they would give them a bow and a plow and an American flag, and then they would make them take an oath. And that oath actually, there's some evidence that it influenced the oath of citizenship that you take now today. But they practiced it and experimented
they were the
with
first
it.
yeah.
But then the really messed up part about it is that we didn't even become citizens. Like, how are you gonna even become citizens? Like, it was a total sham. But they used us as a prop, and then like what became INS actually was like, hey, we really like this oath of allegiance and this ceremony and this flag waving ceremony. Can we adopt it? Because prior to that, there wasn't really a ceremony for becoming a U.S. citizen as an immigrant. So it's like, those are the kinds of things that, like, how do you tell that story? That's not going to be like, that's not going to end up in the Atlantic by Name Your Writer. It's something that, because it's something that's so like dark and, nefarious. It's like, you have
Liberals
to have.
don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
they don't
want to hear that stuff, and like, and that is how it was one of the major ways that like patriotism, flag waving patriotism, and militarism has been indoctrinated into Native people, right? And this was at the height of the off-reservation boarding school system, which was like essentially just military boot camps for Native children.